Hey crafty friends, this is Jenny from crafttestdummies.com, and today I've got the Kaleidoscope Rainbow die pads that I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to show you how they work. Let's take a look. The Kaleidacolor Raised Rainbow ink pads are a really nice dye-based ink. Now, I'm going to show you already my fingers. Dye-based means it will stain your hands, but the color is great. They're very saturated, so let's take a look under the hood. First thing you're going to do is lift off the lid. It comes completely off, and you'll notice that each individual color is separate. This little lever here, though, smushes them together. So if you want to do something like stamp an image, you can have them touching and get that nice gradient color, which would result in something kind of like this. You see that nice gradient of color. Or if you want to leave them separate and use something like a brayer, which is what this is, you can do it that way. Now let me show you just quickly. I'm going to go ahead and brayer this up. And you want to leave them separate with a brayer because there's already going to be enough overlap when you ink it up, like this, mostly. Okay, and then I'm going to go right to the paper and just kind of roller it back and forth so you can see that pretty vibrant color. Now, if for some reason you want to blend it, you're going to want to get to it with a baby wipe or a mister bottle very quickly. See how I'm moving that color around a little bit? As soon as you put it down. Because it's dye-based, it will dry and become permanent very quickly. Also, that means that you cannot emboss with this material, because it just dries so quickly that there's nothing for it to grab onto. So, keeping this in mind, let me put the lid back on and let me show you some swatches and samples. So as I mentioned, it is dye-based, which means that it leaves a really nice crisp image. This is a piece of Claudine Helmuth sticky back canvas. Here's a little piece of fabric, nice crisp image. On some pattern paper and on some darker cardstock. Notice this is all the same red, but it shows up like black on the blue paper because there's no pigment in it. Because it's dye, it soaks right in and there's no color that's kind of laying on top. So that's something to keep in mind. I haven't tested this for color fastness after washing, but I'll be doing that soon. So like I mentioned, once you stamp with it, you have kind of a limited working time. This I spritzed with water immediately afterwards to get kind of a watercolor effect. This one I actually stamped up the image, then sprayed it with a fine mister just to see if I could get it to blend on the stamp, and it did. It muddied it up, the clarity, a little bit here, but you get a nice smooth color, unlike this one, which was, you know, there's a little bit of missing there. But really pretty, nice, crisp stamped images. If you have a larger image like this one here from Tanner Bell Designs, you'll notice that I actually use the brayer to ink it up and then roll it out. And then here's another one of those color stories. And there's some more of that color right from the brayer that then I went over with a baby wipe. Now, because it's also dye-based, it means it's really compatible with anything that you have that sprays or mists. So I laid some color down and then I misted on top, and it makes the yellow, which is the mistable, spread around, but the actual dye ink stays put. So if you like to stamp and then color, or Copic marker, or mist on top, these dye-based pads are great for that. So now we're just going to go through a couple of little samples that I made. So you can see I used, again, this Tanner Bell Designs background stamp a lot. So here's the beautiful gradation of color. And here it is. This is the denim one, which is one of my favorites because it's masculine without being overbearing. But isn't that just the prettiest of colors? Here I used some of the brayering on a card sample. Here's this is Tahiti. That's that color pathway, which I just love. So pretty. And then here's, I had actually stamped in the background and then I stamped over it with clear embossing. So you can stamp over top of it, but you just have to use a pigment ink for that. So, and I think this is the last one. Yep, a little bit of brayering, a little bit of stamping, a lot of pretty. So anyways, I hope this gives you a good overview of the Kaleidacolors. Oh, there's only one downside to this whole thing, and I'll show you what it is. You can't do direct to paper because that lever that keeps it from touching each other actually gets in the way because it's raised up. You can't go direct to paper with this. So that's the only downside. You notice that even after keeping them stored separately, I do have some color bleeding on this one from when it was pushed together. So that's just also something that's going to kind of happen. So love them though, beautiful colors, and I hope this gives you a good idea of how the Kaleidacolor raised rainbow dye ink pads work. And these are from the parent company, Sukaniko. Thank you so much for watching and have a crafty day. I hope this was helpful. If so, please give it a thumbs up. It's like giving us a tip on our tip jar. And we will see you at www.crafttestdummies.com.